Cage Nation TV is brought to you by Lion Country's rock station 105.9 Quick Rock. Streaming worldwide at 1059quickrock.com.
Let's go. Welcome to the Cage Nation. Welcome to the Cage Nation. Welcome to the Cage Nation. No one can drop us, no one can stop us. We are the warriors, no one can top us, no one can rock us. We are the warriors, no one can drop us, no one can stop us. We are the warriors, no one can top us, no one can rock us. We are the warriors.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, watching Cage Nation TV. Of course, the Cameron Cam decided it did not want to work today, so we are bringing you the audio-exclusive version of Cage Nation TV. But it's okay. To make it up to you, I've got a great personality of the MMA world, the area's best photographer for combat sports, and a very good personal friend of mine, and a contributor to Cage Nation TV. I'm talking to Mr. Rob Lynn. Rob, how you doing?
Pretty good. Thank you for having me.
Hey, no, thank you for making the trip down to State College. We certainly want to see more of you on Cage Nation TV. Coming up on today's episode, Rob, we got Rampage Jackson coming back to the UFC, which was kind of a big surprise considering that we're all pretty sure he's still really involved with Bellator.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if you agree with me or disagree with me on this, but I think that Bellator should just let him go.
We're gonna get into that here.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the UFC antitrust stuff. We've had a lot of great conversation about this off mic, and I think I'm gonna be kind of curious how we bring that to the show without leaving out the cursing. But I mean, I think we got some good insight into what's going on here, and I think we really need to think about if the UFC does go under, what is next for everybody.
The next UFC event's what's going to be next. They're not going under. Don't worry about it.
Okay, so Rob and I disagree, and that's what makes for great programming. All that and more right here on Cage Nation TV. We're going to talk to one of our sponsors, and we're coming right back. Cage Nation TV. Of course, I am your host, the elected official, Mr. Albert Cameron. With me is Rob Lynn. Rob, Rampage Jackson's back in the UFC.
Why?
That's what I'm wondering. I mean, last week we're talking about CM Punk being signed to the UFC.
Yeah, another bum. Well, I shouldn't.
We don't know if he's a bum.
Yeah, that's the thing. I shouldn't say anything bad about him. He has no MMA accolades, but I don't know if he'll perform. Rampage, on the other hand, I know how he has performed.
Yeah.
It's not good. Okay. He did well early in his career.
Yeah.
He did well in Pride. And, obviously he'd be in his prime.
Oh, his fight with Ricardo Arona is one of the... Whenever you watch an MMA highlight reel, Rampage Jackson slamming Ricardo Arona is probably one of the most iconic images we have of Rampage Jackson.
Yeah, definitely. And then, okay, what happens... Pride goes under, is bought, and you go from there, all of these Pride exports come to the UFC, and not all of them did well.
No, I think a fraction of them did well.
Anderson Silva, now I understand that he didn't come over as a
Pride fighter. I don't consider Anderson Silva a Pride transplant. I consider him a Shudo transplant.
Okay, I'll give you that. But what I'm getting is, not everyone in Pride was set up for failure when they would end up in the UFC.
Right.
If you look at Rampage's past fights in the UFC, the last noteworthy win, in my eyes, and I know that you and I have disagreement on this, is Wanderlei Silva in 2008. It's 2014. It's almost going to be 2015.
Right.
He was getting near the end of his prime then. This is 6 years later.
Yeah.
So Rampage is past his prime, well past it, and his last win was against an already brain-damaged Wanderlei Silva. His last good win in the UFC.
Yeah.
Okay, and I understand he did beat Lyoto Machida. It was a split decision, one that even the haters thought that Machida should have got.
I drink the Machida haterade. I'm not a big fan of the guy, but
I agree.
But when the consensus is Rampage should not have won that fight.
Well,
that was Machida's fight, and I mean. I can disagree with Machida's style all I want, but
It worked last night.
Yes, it did. And that was CB Dollaway.
Yeah, CB Dollaway is probably nursing some fractured ribs and definitely a liver that hurts. But, okay, and then let's look at who he's lost to in the UFC.
It's a big list.
It's a murderer's row. I mean, it's talent, you know. Some people might say something bad about Forrest Griffin, but I looked at Forrest Griffin as a working fighter. You know, he had a good work rate, and as he said, he wasn't great at anything. He was just a dog, and he'll make it a fight. And he has some good wins. Griffin does, right? You know.
At the end of the day, I think as MMA fans, we all owe Forrest Griffin a big debt of gratitude because it was his fight with Stephan Bonner that made MMA what it is on American television.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I mean, he's been light heavyweight champion, but when him and Rampage fought, might not have been at the height of his career, but it was still it was a dogfight.
Yeah, and, you know, so he loses to Griffin. He loses to Rashad Evans. He loses to John Jones. He loses to Ryan Bader. He loses to Glover Teixeira.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. It's a murderer's row of people.
Yeah.
I certainly wouldn't want to fight any of them. However, notwithstanding, he lost those fights.
Yeah.
The people that he beat, it's not very impressive.
You mean in his Bellator, his recent fights in Bellator?
I'm saying UFC.
Period.
I'm getting to the Bellator, and then I'm going to come back. So what Bellator got was they got a guy that had a temper tantrum with the UFC, thought he wasn't being treated right.
Well, we talked about that. When he left the UFC, middle fingers blazing, MFing everybody.
Yeah, exactly. So, but he was throwing a fit saying that he wasn't treated right. Mm-hmm. And what did he do? What, aside from his star power that he brought over from Pride, and, you know, coming over and beating Chuck Liddell that's past his prime.
Chuck Liddell was way past his prime.
Or Marvin Eastman. Oh, tell me that wasn't a gimme fight. You know,
the Marvin Eastman fight was a rematch from Marvin Eastman's first fight back in King of the Cage, and I love King of the Cage.
Yeah.
I'm a very big fan of King of the Cage, but King of the Cage's fights don't have that global impact. Not like they used to, at least. When MMA was all really, really West Coast centric, King of the Cage's fights did have an impact, but now that the UFC has a much better national reach, intercontinental reach, and global reach, King of the Cage's fights just don't have the impact they were. So Marvin Eastman and Rampage Jackson are rematching from King of the Cage, and Marvin Eastman has a full-time job.
Yeah, that I would say that's a problem.
That's a handicap.
Exactly. There's very few fighters that have made it into the top echelon having a full-time job. Chris Lytle is one of the first that comes to my mind, and I think that he would have had probably a better career had he not had to have that full-time job. So you look at those fights that he had, that Rampage had.
Yeah.
He throws a big hissy fit. Big hissy fit. Oh, I don't like Dana White. They treat me poorly. I don't get paid enough money. You know, meanwhile, I'm going to go crazy and drive my truck down the road. Now, he goes to Bellator.
Yeah.
And let's look at this list here, okay? He beats Joey Beltran, okay? The Mexicutioner, right?
The Mexicutioner.
Right?
Yeah.
That's Joey Beltran. What did Joey Beltran do that was even semi-noteworthy that got him into Bellator? Lost in the UFC.
Yeah.
I know that. Okay. Christian Mapumbo. Who the hell is this guy?
We tried looking at his record before the show, and I don't think we found anything that was...
Yeah, I mean,
that wasn't substantial for a former world light heavyweight champion to fight.
Exactly. Okay, and I'll get to that here in just 1 second. And probably the most qualified opponent for him.
King Mo Lawal.
Yeah, exactly. And even him I can't take seriously because of his professional wrestling crossover nonsense. I mean, to me, it takes his legitimacy away.
Well, Rampage got involved in the same professional wrestling nonsense.
And he's an idiot.
And because it was Rampage Jackson left for the greener pastures of Bellator, which we found out weren't greener.
Yeah.
By any stretch of the imagination. Yeah. So they're announcing, hey, Rampage Jackson's coming to Bellator. He's going to fight. He's going to fight Tito Ortiz.
Yeah. When did that happen?
It didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
It didn't. So, like, you know...
what's Tito do? What does Tito do?
Tito...
He fights a fat, out of shape Stephan Bonner
Stephan Bonner, who was in retirement, well into retirement.
Yeah, and you know what? Stephan made it. I mean, it was sad to watch, but Stephan still had it in there. I mean, and there was some negative things said about the fight, but I enjoyed watching it. It was free on TV.
Can't argue. I mean, 10 years ago, we never find fights on free TV.
Exactly. So let's circle back. Okay,
Rampage Jackson gets involved with Tito Ortiz because the greener pastures of Bellator.
Exactly.
And they get involved in an Impact Wrestling angle where Rampage or Tito gets hit with a sledgehammer. How can you take that seriously?
I can't. To me,
I can't take that kind of cross promotion seriously.
Now, and I want to be very, very clear and succinct when I say this, that I am not discrediting the martial artists themselves. Okay, it takes a hell of a lot of a sack to get in there and willingly get decked.
Yeah. You're going to get hit in the face.
Exactly. So, but what I am getting at is specifically, this is very much like the former Wright Elementary football team going up against, I don't know, a championship team like the Steelers or the Packers or even
the Patriots.
Or even the grade schoolers going up against the college up here, Penn State. You know what I mean? To me, it's two different tier levels of talent.
There's a reason why the UFC has the most high level stuff. And the days of fighters being unhappy at the UFC and having a competitive place to go to are long gone. I mean, if someone in the UFC was unhappy and I'm going to go make my money elsewhere, they had pride. In those days are gone because Bellator, as much as I'm happy that there's fights on free TV, Bellator is not the competition that the UFC is. Not even, I mean, it's like indoor football and the NFL.
Yeah, Bellator, World Series of Fighting, they are not competition for the UFC. They are, to me, an additional product to the UFC. It's like, oh, there's no UFC going on tonight.
Well,
what am I going to watch here? And I've heard the comparison made that it's similar, like the UFC would be the NFL, and then the smaller leagues would be like college football. To me, that's not true because college football, I think, has a substantial following in the talent pool. I mean, obviously, these guys end up going into the NFL.
Yeah.
Or, they go into their career, whatever they do with their life. And I'm sorry I digress, but what I'm getting at is specifically these guys, while they may be good fighters, while they may have great amounts of heart, while they may be the toughest guy at the bar that day of the week, I'm sorry, the guy who was in the UFC, who was a world champion, he demands a higher quality opponent. And you see what happens when he fights those higher quality guys. Teixeira, Bader, Jones, Evans, Griffin, all beat him. And in my mind, Machida beat him too. Even though the record book says differently.
I think that's fair enough. One of the questions we're presenting ourselves, we're going to get into the legal issues, but one of the questions we present ourselves was Jackson's level of competition when he was in Bellator going to prepare him for the way that the UFC light heavyweight division has evolved.
I want to help you here. I want to make this real quick. Go to www.ufc.com. I can't remember the complete string.
/fighters,
/weight class, /light heavyweight. And there's a list of 47 people that are going to kick his butt. I'm sorry. It's just how it's going to work.
I agree. We did.
And I liked Rampage's personality. The whole yelling and everything. That was great.
I think Rampage is a great entertainer. And I think if he ever decides that...
When you say entertainer, do you mean like a professional wrestling entertainer?
That's what I'm getting at. Like, if he ever decided that, he wants to cash in on his ability to entertain, I think professional wrestling might be a great avenue for him. Because, they do have to be quality entertainers to do that. I mean, CM Punk is a quality entertainer. That's why we're all listening with bated breath what he's saying, because he says stuff for the fact of, I know it's going to make people listen. Does that qualify him to be a UFC fighter? Absolutely not.
You have to have the chops to back it up. Do you know who could talk the game? Chael Sonnen, one of my favorite fighters.
Yeah.
You know why?
Because he can back it up.
And you know what? He'll run his mouth, and if he gets beat, he'll come right out and say, "I got my ass handed to me." Yeah. That's what happened.
Yeah.
And what did he do after he got beat? He lobbied to get another shot at Silva, and he's like, "I'm going to do this again." And and then he fell, and got his heart kneed out of his head. But the thing that I think here, why bring Rampage back?
It doesn't make sense.
I like and I'll tell you, I have a fond memory of when my wife and we met, she was going to college up in Indiana.
Yeah.
And I understand that that'd be sacrilege since I'm up here in, Penn State town. So please don't lynch me. But my wife and we were up in Indiana, and I was going up to see her. This is before we got married, before we were engaged. And we were going to watch a UFC. Well, the place that we were to watch it wasn't getting the fight, and we had to look for a bar that had it. And I remember watching Rampage beat Marvin Eastman in the UFC.
Yeah.
With my wife.
I have similar memories of watching Rampage fight. I mean, Rampage has fought in King of the Cage, which I've already said that I absolutely love KOTC. Gladiator Challenge. Those are videos in my fight library that I really kind of treasure because they do have those old kind of memories for me. Comes down to iron sharpens iron. And Rob, with you being a judo black belt, you know that your training partners and the level of competition you're in will really dictate where you're going to go.
Oh, definitely. You can be very, very good, but you need to have training partners that can push you to the next level.
And the people you compete against. Also say, this level of competition I'm at, I don't think Rampage Jackson has got that level of competition in Bellator. And I don't think he's ready for the hype of the UFC machine to say, hey, Rampage is back. Cody Garbrandt just got signed by the UFC. And I'd like to see a lot more pomp and circumstance behind that because Cody No Love Garbrandt is he's a stud. He's a stud athlete.
Yeah, definitely.
He's got knockout power. He's got submission game. I would certainly like to hear more about a Cody Garbrandt who trains with Team Alpha Male and Uriah Faber than I would be to hear about Rampage Jackson coming back.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm in agreement with you there because now my real problem with this is just, okay, we talk about this. Iron sharpens iron. So the way to get better is to fight top quality opponents.
Yeah.
Muhammad Lawal was the best guy he fought in Bellator. Okay?
And how long has he been in Bellator? For a year, maybe 2? Maybe even 3.
Yeah. But what I'm getting at, he didn't fight enough people to become sharpened. And he wasn't doing well in the UFC to begin with.
No.
Because, and I'm going to call it like I see it. When you're getting your ass kicked and you're not getting your way, and maybe you're a little unhappy because your manager's bilking you or whoever's bilking your money out of your pocket,
right,
you start looking for people to blame. This is what happened. Rampage got his ass kicked by a couple people in the UFC, throws a hissy fit about money. His managers might be ripping him off, whatever. I'm leaving. I'm going to greener pastures, baby. I'm going to Bellator. And guess what?
The grass was dead when he got to Bellator.
He got the dead grass. He didn't fight top quality people, so he wasted years of his life. Chuck Liddell retired how long ago? He was smart.
Yeah.
He was smart.
Well, Dana White essentially made Chuck retire. I mean, Dana White and Chuck Liddell had a relationship, and Dana White was looking for a career. But how do you say, I'm going to build this new chapter in my career when you're going to fight Tito Ortiz, who's, again, left, middle fingers blazing, MFing everybody? I'm going to fight Tito Ortiz. This is going to be my comeback. This is going to be the return, and I'm hyping it by getting hit with a sledgehammer on Impact Wrestling. Well, speaking of Rampage Jackson, middle fingers blazing, MFing everybody, I think that might be the case when he's leaving Bellator. Because he's saying, I didn't like my contract. I didn't like what they're doing. I terminated it. Well, in the world of contract law, you don't just say, I'm done. There's consideration. There's other parties involved. Scott Coker said himself, let us be clear that Quentin Rampage Jackson is under an exclusive contract with hashtag Bellator MMA. We will protect our contractual rights.
Yeah, and that was last night during the event, right?
Yeah.
That he put that out, and that was on Twitter.
Yeah.
In case we didn't, source our or cite our sources.
I'm showing my age. I thought maybe hashtag would kind of say it, but Twitter. No, yeah. Scott Coker took it.
I'm an old man. Okay, you need to tell me these things.
I don't get the young kid references either.
Well, I'm a lot older than you, and let me tell you, I go out and someone, if we're just running our mouths like, oh, hashtag real talk. I don't know that's Twitter, and I don't know the whole double deuces with your fingers making the hashtag sign.
Wasn't it we saw a picture last night that says how old's my jiu-jitsu? Well, long enough to know that I stole it from Black Belt Magazine, not from YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but Scott Coker said he's willing to. He's drawing a line in the sand. He's saying Rampage is under our employ.
He should.
I absolutely agree with that. I mean, if Rampage is unhappy, it's the fact of you can possibly have a conversation because fight promotions grant releases all the time.
My conversation with Rampage would be very simple if I was Scott Coker. All right, see ya.
Okay.
I would let him go. You know why I'd let him go?
Because an unhappy fighter isn't going to make you the money you thought he would.
Not even that, no. Rampage isn't the big draw anymore.
Agreed.
He's not worth the money that Bellator is paying him.
Okay.
So Scott needs to look at this as a chance to get rid of a liability and pursue some other assets. Because, okay, what do you have with Bellator? You have the organization that would probably be like, I guess, the ipso facto number 2 MMA organization.
But number 2 by default.
By default. But then again, showing up to a competition with only 2 people and getting a medal for being the last place. But no, and I don't mean that badly.
No, you're not. No, you're right.
But the hierarchy of MMA goes the local idiot who gets a promoter's license, or maybe not, and he just is like, oh, we're gonna have a fight in the yard,
right?
And he has some meatheads go pound on each other, and then you have the local promoter. I know I said local already, but like now we're going to go to an actual local promoter that goes, you know what, I'm going to try and put on fights, try and do things, and get fights out there.
Right.
And they start with a smaller budget, smaller scale. Then you have your regional promotions, okay, and they put on bigger shows, like for example, Gladiators at Stage AE. They're a top tier regional promotion.
I can agree with that.
Now, what do you do next? What's the next step up? Where do you go from Gladiators and
from
Pinnacle
Gladiators?
and stuff like that?
If you're going from Gladiators and Pinnacle, you maybe have a TV deal.
Okay.
Or a decent TV deal. And then you try to find the best of those regional promotions and highlight those. Because you think about it, Rob. Like we both have
where do
business
you go from there? Is what I'm getting at. Where does the promotional hierarchy go? Okay, it's regional promotions.
Regional, then you go national.
Okay, and then who are they? You got Bellator
and
World Series of Fighting. Okay, in our end of the area. Now I get it. There's
Japan has ONE FC.
Yeah.
I don't think Dream's promoting anymore, but like K1.
Yeah, and what is the deal with K1? Is it kickboxing sometimes? Is it MMA another time? I don't. It's
K1's the kickboxing. K1 Heroes is the
is
MMA.
it MMA? Yeah, and that's just crazy to me. Like
staying to your core. We both have. You and I have like almost identical business degrees, and we both know that if you're going to compete with the UFC, you got to try to stay ahead of them. You got to know what's coming down the pipeline first. Bellator has the opportunity. They've got the TV deal. They've got the financial backing behind them. Bellator has already said we're abandoning our tournament format, which was their core competency. That's what brought Bellator to the...
Yeah, and I kind of worry about that.
I do too. Scott Coker has proven himself a successful promoter. When Strikeforce was bought, Strikeforce, wasn't having money problems that were public. They didn't have a problem with their IPO. They didn't have any issues like that. Scott Coker essentially went out on top.
You know what needs to happen? I'll tell you exactly what I think needs to happen. Coker needs to say, you know what? I have a chance to cut this loss.
Yeah.
Get rid of Rampage.
Invest the money in someone else.
And you know what Dana needs to do?
What?
He needs to go, you know what? He made the right move. I'm cutting him out too. And then Rampage can go crawl under the same rock that Bjorn Rebney's hiding under right now. And we just call it a day. Done. Wrapped up. Because like I said, that's how things go. You go local, regional, then your larger national promotions, and then it goes to UFC. There is no better, more serious MMA promotion in the UFC. And that's probably why I have such chagrin over things like the CM Punk thing.
Yeah.
And the Brock Lesnar thing I wasn't too happy with, but look what he did.
Brock Lesnar proved himself.
Yeah, he did. And I do want to give, and I know I circle back to this, but it's just something that has me kind of amped up a little bit,
You both.
But look at what has happened. You have the UFC with the Fox deal.
Yeah.
You have the UFC. There's almost an event every week. It's hard to keep everything straight.
MMA's doing better.
That's awesome.
MMA's doing better in boxing.
Oh yeah.
Because like you watch boxing on TV, my problem with boxing on TV is I can't follow it. I have no idea who the contenders are. I have no idea why I should be interested in the fight I'm watching. MMA has got that, and there's lots of great free TV on the phone.
Exactly. And the last real noteworthy thing that I can really say about boxing was one of our regional fighters. I'd say he's a regional fighter because he fought Osinki. Osahan
Omo Osagi.
That's it. Thank you. He fought on Gladiators, right? Or what? I know he fought in CDMMA.
I believe he was fought at Pinnacle and CDMMA.
Pinnacle and CDMMA. Okay. Yeah. But he had a thing on his Facebook page of a boxer, Alexander Khan, I think is the name.
Yeah.
And, that's the last noteworthy thing I seen there. I seen hand speed that was like, oh my God, if you hit me that many times, I'd be dead.
Osagi's hand speed?
No, not Osagi's.
Okay.
The guy that
Osagi's got great hands.
Oh yeah,
too.
yeah. But this is a video that Osagi posted of a pro boxing fight,
Right.
and it was it was Alexander Khan 12-round championship fight. Now, but then what was the other most noteworthy thing I've seen about boxing? They had
Mayweather and Pacquiao coming out and challenging. But that
fight should have happened 10 years ago.
Thank you.
Or maybe 6. I don't know. It's hard to keep track, like you said. But here is the most recent thing that matters to me in boxing, and this will show you how relevant boxing is anymore to me, is that in Playboy this month, they had an interview with all of the people that were around when Mike Tyson was at his height and he fought Buster Douglas in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That's the most recent thing that mattered to me about boxing, is an article that came out in this month's Playboy. Everyone like circling back to, hey, this is what went on then. And how many years ago was that fight?
More than 10.
Okay. So what do you have? And I know that some people, try and make the assertion that Dana White is the Don King of MMA. And I don't think
Not
he
even
is.
close.
Because I think Don King has done some damage to boxing.
He has.
And that's just my thought. I could be 100% wrong. I think that with Tyson, we were looking at, possibly one of the best heavyweights that would have been the best heavyweight of all time, in my opinion. But, Givens getting involved, Don King getting involved, and Costa Yamato dying, all problems. But anyway, I'm sorry, I'm digressing. But what I'm getting at is boxing is no longer relevant to me.
Right.
MMA is.
Right.
You have programming every week, so many that you can, any fan can get involved in this.
With
your
cables on demand, you're like, you don't even have to be there to watch it. You can get it on demand. Like, it's available to you.
And who's doing this? The UFC.
Yeah.
Okay, so when everyone thinks MMA, they think, oh, you fight UFC. Okay. Oh, I train UFC, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. No one says, and if they have, these words don't exist to me in my mind.
Ultimate Fighting?
I train Bellator, bro. Are you training World Series of Fighting? Yeah. To me, these are not synonymous with, and they're top tier MMA promotions, right? Definitely, but they're ousted by the big dog,
Right.
And
it's the UFC having market share. It's the UFC having brand recognition and market share. And I think we're going to talk a lot about that more when we get into the UFC antitrust stuff. But,
yeah, we will.
But
what Bellator needs to do, I'm sorry.
What Bellator needs to do is they need to. We study business. Both you and I study business. Our degrees are almost identical. We know that if the Bellator is going to compete with the UFC, what the UFC is doing right now, Bellator has to be 2 steps ahead of the UFC. And right now, 2 steps ahead are fighting on regional promotions like Gladiators of the Cage and Pinnacle FC. Bellator has the means to propel these guys into the stratosphere and to make money on promoting them. And not wasting their money on Rampage Jackson.
Exactly. Cut the Rampage loss out of there. Get him gone. And then Stephan Bonner, he goes over to fight Tito Ortiz. And you know what, Stephan, it was cute. Retire. I'm sure Uncle Dana will take care of you that you don't need to do that anymore.
Right.
And that whole Bellator paying him, he got an outrageous sum. That was money that just...
FU money.
Exactly. Tito Ortiz, you know what? Maybe he can have a twilight and maybe go out, on top of Bellator. We know he's not going to come back as a top-tier UFC fighter ever again. He was what? 1-8, I think it was 1-8 or 2-7 in 9 fight span. Okay. And I'm not saying you can't come back from that. You can, but these people that they're paying outlandish amounts of money to, they need to get rid of them. They need to get some talent, and they need to get a push behind some people that they can really market as their own. Because that would be the real FU to UFC is, hey, you're using our guy that we brought up that he's great.
We produce the franchise fighter. And, it might be the time for a Tito Ortiz or Stephan Bonner to retire, because the days of your fight career being over and then you have nothing left but a future of running a gym, those days are kind of over too. I mean, because MMA personalities are becoming stars in other media. And I'm talking about Ronda Rousey being in the Expendables 3, Forrest Griffin writing a book.
I wish I would expend all of them 3 times over. I'm sorry. The movies were...
it was meant to be a throwback to action flicks, and
I get it, but to me, I like poorly dubbed Asian action flicks.
I like Bloodsport. That is my favorite.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No,
nothing wrong with that at all. But what you need to do, and what anyone listening / watching this needs to do, is there's a Jet Li flick called Contract Killer. You need to get that. That's an action flick. Poorly dubbed. It's just great all the way around.
So Wrapping up the Rampage Jackson coming back to the UFC. I think we had a great discussion about it. Is a legal battle with Bellator what the UFC needs right now? And I think you said it best that the UFC has better lawyers than what Bellator can afford.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I in my mind, I don't think that this is like, and I get where you're going with this question. Is a legal battle over Rampage worth it right now when they have a potential antitrust suit on the horizon?
Right.
To me, I wouldn't see it as a concern because basically here's what's going to happen. You're going to have some really good UFC lawyers go in really expensive tailored suits.
Yeah.
They're going to walk in and they're going to be like, la-di-da-di-da-di-da, shake their hips a little bit. Here's a paper that says we get Rampage Jackson, or we will tie this up in litigation. You won't get a fighter, and we'll make it ugly for you.
Right.
And they have more money than Bellator to do that.
Is that... I can agree with that. I mean, because UFC wouldn't take that gamble unless they had a confidence in it. But, I mean, is it overconfidence in Bellator's inability to fight for Rampage or overconfidence in their ability to fight the antitrust? I mean, could the UFC...
Maybe it could be both. And you know what? Maybe it also could be because they're thinking Rampage's contract was written on the back of an IHOP napkin. You know? I mean, he has brain damage, I'm sure. You know,
like that's certainly thought up. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we can agree that maybe the UFC investing in Rampage Jackson might not have been the best thing for them to do because there are other fighters on the horizon who are ready to be contenders.
Here's something else to consider, though. Remember, I don't have the experience in MMA promotion that Dana White and his crew do, and the Fertitas and all that. You know, they know infinitely more about MMA promotion than I do.
Ultimately, they are the best promoters on the planet and the best MMA promoters in history. Mm-hmm. That's, I mean, the short history it is, they are simply the best, and they've proven it by...
Wait, you don't think Affliction was the best MMA promotion? I can't even joke with you about that without laughing. You know,
I couldn't even say that with a straight face.
Yeah, like, I tried. It didn't work.
Affliction wasn't the best. Gary Shaw in Pro Elite wasn't the best. We want to run down the failed promotions. Let's talk about Affliction. They had, 3 fights? The WFA, where Fight Club meets nightclub. I mean, we even tried to look in it to give the WFA some credibility. We couldn't do it. Like,
Chemo Leopoldo, buddy.
We looked at the WFA cards, and there was more cans on those cards than a grocery store aisle. Okay.
There were some good fighters that come up through there, but you know,
drastically there are more cans than there were good fighters. I like the IFL, but I mean, that's another example of dropping your core competency and then everything going to hell. King of the Cages survived because they do cage fights. They never separated from that. WEC, and Strikeforce. The UFC is the best at it. They're good at eliminating their competition. We're going to talk about that in the antitrust, but. I like Rampage Jackson. I think he's entertaining, and I'd like to thank him for all the memories we have, like you seeing, a Rampage fight Marvin Eastman when you and your wife were at a bar in Indiana. I'm watching.
I'm hoping that it was the Marvin Eastman fight. I'm gonna have to look at the dates on that, but it was either the Marvin Eastman or the Chuck Liddell fight.
Well, did he win? Because I think we can pare it down.
He won that night.
Okay, we can pare it down to like maybe 3 fights.
It was the Eastman or the Chuck Liddell, and I remember the vintage. And the only reason I say this, and I shouldn't really have to worry about this, is if my wife listens, and she gets on her little iPad or whatever, and she's like, "Hey, you weren't up there then with me. It was this one. You don't even remember.
Oh, I've had problems with fact checkers ever since I started doing MMA coverage.
God. Yeah.
Yeah.
They come at you like a rhino.
Yep. Coming up on Cage Nation TV, we're going to talk about the UFC antitrust lawsuit, what it means. We've also got a fight in the Cage Nation Underground talking about K1 and K1 Heroes. We got Peter Aerts versus Waka Shoyo in the Cage Nation TV Underground. We got all that coming up. We're going to, we'll be back.
Don't worry about remote signal blockage again. Introducing the Top Mount. This low-profile shelf is perfect for placing your cable box where you can use it. The easy-to-install lightweight shelf is designed to fit behind almost any flat-screen TV, with or without a wall mount. The Top Mount is perfect for easy access to cable boxes, game consoles, and DVD players. Don't have your signal blocked again. Order your Top Mount today at thetopmount.com.
Cage Nation TV, we are back. Albert Cameron, your elected official. Affected by some things, but who knows what. We got Rob Lynn, the best photographer in all of combat sports in the center region here. We're here and we're talking about... We're going really long this episode, but you know what? I'm fine with it because we got a great exchange of information going on. Rob, the UFC is being sued. I can't imagine it's the first time. I can't imagine it's ever going to be the last time. But I think it's the first time where we've had UFC talent actually actively behind the lawsuit. The UFC is being sued for antitrust.
You want to know what I think is going to happen?
Please tell me.
I think the UFC could go sit on their toilet and wipe their ass with this lawsuit and just flush it down the toilet. Antitrust. Come on. What are they doing that's stopping other promotions from getting out there?
I don't think they are. I mean, when
They're
you're
not doing a damn thing, and you have to look at what qualifies as antitrust.
Antitrust is business practices that are preventing other entities from competing, which they are not.
Are they colluding with anyone?
No.
Okay.
Well, Reebok maybe.
Yeah, don't get me started on that joke. And the sponsorships, how the sponsorships work for the fighters. I do disagree with a little bit of how that works.
Yeah.
The whole like pay the X fee to be an official sponsor, and then you pay the fighter. And I get part of why they do that though, but and I'm digressing, but the antitrust thing, they're not doing anything to stop Bellator from growing. They're not doing anything to stop World Series of Fighting from growing. I mean, well, no, hold on. Hold on. The big bad UFC is taking Quentin Rampage Jackson away from Uncle Bellator. And, what do we do? So maybe they are colluding.
If we could get someone to call Amnesty International to stop that travesty, I think it would be helpful. But my chief complaint ever since I've been involved with actively covering MMA, which started with CDMMA 3, was when I did my first commentary for MMA, and we did the MMA rundown around there. But my chief complaint amongst all the time I've ever been covering MMA was people going around saying the UFC is a monopoly. UFC is a monopoly. No, Monopoly is a game.
That's awesome.
It is. I do enjoy playing it, and I think you and I having our real estate backgrounds, like we love playing Monopoly. But the UFC is like not a monopoly. The UFC is a free enterprise, and they made a ton of money by doing something well.
What's wrong with that?
Nothing.
Not a damn thing. I like money.
The government will not prohibit a bargain. The government will not prohibit someone from doing something well and making a ton of money at it. And you know why the UFC makes a ton of money at it? Because we pay them our money to watch fights.
Yeah.
That's why the UFC makes money, because we pay it. If the UFC was so terrible, go watch the quality fights over in Bellator, because we just got done talking about all the great fisticuffs you're going to see over there.
This is what I'm going to tell you. Even if this was a case that was going before the court,
I don't think this is going to be seen by the grand jury whatsoever.
Let's give it a chance.
Okay.
Let's say that it's went through all of the channels. It's right now. It's at the Supreme Court of the land. What a joke that is. But it's at the Supreme Court. Okay.
All right.
And these judges, these incompetent individuals. I'm sorry, competent individuals. But I meant what I said. They have to see this through.
Yeah.
So we're in fantasy land. Well, no. If we are in fantasy land, the judges are competent.
Due process says a complaint was filed, they have to hear it.
They have to. And it's been appealed and everything's going on.
Yeah.
And it's going to be held January 2nd.
Yeah.
Here's my advice to you. Don't cancel your January 3rd UFC fight plans, because I'm telling you, this is going nowhere.
Right. Right now, spearheading the entire UFC fighter union. The entire UFC fighter union is Kung Lee, which is the only active UFC competitor right now, who has just been...
But not the most talented on this list. No, I'm being serious.
No, with John Fitch.
John
Fitch being another one. I think John Fitch was welterweight king for the longest time.
Yeah, and to me, it's a shame, really how things went with John Fitch.
Oh, agreed.
And to me, it would suck to be John Fitch.
Oh, yeah.
Here I am. I can always be number 2, but I can't be number 1.
Because I'm not in the UFC.
Well, no, not that. No, when he was in the UFC.
Oh, yeah.
He can't be champ. He couldn't climb that hurdle. You seen what GSP did to him.
Oh, yeah.
And at that time when when John Fitch was the guy, GSP was doing that to people. Now, granted, I don't agree with how GSP fought his last 7-8 fights, but that's
I don't think you and I will ever be accused of being huge GSP fans.
My favorite GSP. I was not impressed by your performance. When he comes in and yells that to Matt Hughes. Oh God. And then when GSP says the word rhythm, he goes, rhythm. Oh,
Rhythm.
I love it. But here's the thing. John Fitch, talented guy.
Yeah.
Excellent wrestler.
Extremely.
Work rate, it's unbelievable. Did you know he's a smoker too?
Really?
Someone told me he's a smoker, which is unreal to me that he has the cardiovascular.
So he has universal class cardio to be able to smoke and compete at that level.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know if it's true. I'm not going to cite that source, but no, I will. It was on a SureDog forum one day.
Well, then it must be gospel. It has to be true if it was on the SureDog forum.
But okay, so Kung Lee, John Fitch,
and Nate the Rock Quarry.
Yeah, he hasn't been relevant since
Caleb
Starnes. That's the Caleb Starnes fight when Caleb was running from him.
Yeah, and then Nate Quarry mocked him in the middle of the cage. Caleb Starnes ended up flipping off in the middle of the fight.
If we were on video right now, I would do the imitation. Oh God, that is so funny. But
he's doing like a little jogging thing. Caleb Starnes flipped him off. But to me, Nate Quarry's apex was the Rich Franklin fight when Rich Franklin rearranged his nose.
Yeah, karma's a bitch for Mr. Franklin, though, isn't it?
We got done talking about that too. I mean,
Silva ruined Franklin. Franklin.
Yeah,
because Franklin was always a good fighter.
Anderson Silva ruined Chris Lieben too.
Anderson Silva had 100% punch accuracy in that fight.
Was it 100?
It had to be.
I read somewhere it was like 93.
Well, I don't believe that shit. What do you do? Miss one punch? I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean that punch accuracy was ridiculous. Anderson Silva ruined Chris Lieben and Rich Franklin. Now I'm a very big fan of Chris Lieben, and Chris Lieben, of course, being a Team Quest teammate with Nate the Rock Quarry. Nate the Rock Quarry suing the UFC. I brought it around. I was able to bring that around. It was like playing 6
degrees of separation.
6 degrees of Anderson Silva.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you. So Nate Quarry is.
I bet you couldn't do that with Doka Tana, the guy who triangle choked Anderson.
Triangle choked.
Yeah, it was overseas. I can't pronounce the name. Doka.
The only memorable loss I remember of Anderson Silva was that flying heel hook he lost to
Hio Chonan.
Yeah.
Okay, well you have 6 degrees to get that back. No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go back to where. I'm sorry. Rock Quarry.
Nate the Rock Quarry, I mean, I really think his career kind of apex whenever Rich Franklin. I mean, Rich Franklin hit him hard.
Did you see his head? It was great.
His nose was displaced. I mean, it was in the center.
Just bleed.
It was in the center of his face, and then his right cheek grew a nose.
Yeah.
That's how hard he got hit.
Yeah.
That's when Rich Franklin really lost steam for me. But again, that Caleb Starnes interaction was really, really funny.
Yeah, I like that.
So, I mean, how much legitimacy does the UFC antitrust lawsuit have whenever
None.
It's one actual signed UFC talent who has been MFing the UFC lately, saying he wants out of his contract, which, where's he going to go?
And why is he want out of his contract? He's mad that the UFC, and we're talking about Kung Lee here.
Yeah.
He's mad that it looked like he was juicing. He failed the drug test, remember?
Yeah.
The results were overturned, not because they were found to be inconclusive, not because they were found that, he didn't do drugs. It was, they didn't like the procedure that was done with the blood. So, okay, so, he's not a juicer.
He wasn't found by due process to be a juicer.
But he's mad that they didn't believe him first. Well, I'm sorry. If I walk into the room, you got a gun in your hand and there's a body on the floor, you shot the person until you've given me reason to believe you haven't. I'm sorry. That's how it works.
Due process is you have to believe that I didn't shoot the guy until you can prove that I did.
Mm-hmm.
It's innocent until proven guilty. I mean, the first impression is you walk in a room, you see a gun, you see a dead body, you assume I shoot him. But due process says I did not shoot him until you can prove that I did. But yes. I mean, he's MFing the UFC right now because he didn't get their immediate support, which...
They didn't believe me. I'm mad.
I mean, I would like to think that I'd have my employers, loyalty with those sort of things. So they'd have my back. I mean, I can understand having a fit. But a class action antitrust lawsuit?
Yeah. Oh, and
really?
Did you see that it was on Twitter? And, I can't believe that I'm in a time when this is even real, okay? And what I mean, and I do have to go on a tangent. You'll have to allot me this airtime.
Go right ahead.
Okay, I have always been very vehemently against any news being like, so what do you think? Tell us your view. That's not the news. The news is what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay? The people, what do they think? That's the people at the bar or at work talking about it.
The water cooler
Thank you. The brouhaha around the water cooler.
Yeah.
Okay? You go to the underground. Oh, so tell us what you think, UG. No! I want to hear from people that can report on news.
In the know.
Objectively, in the know. Not like Ariel Helwani.
No.
Yeah. Oh, don't even get me started.
Well, it's like when Valley Fight League started melting down, July of 2012. We reported on it. We had news that was accurate. We didn't say, hey, what did you guys hear? We said, this is what we know, X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
That was reporting a situation.
And to me, that's relevant. But maybe the times have changed. Maybe I need to come out from under the rock that I am living under. And I do live under one. I miss a lot of things. But to me, when Twitter is news, this is something else.
Yeah.
But Cody McKenzie and Mac Danzig are having it out on Twitter over the antitrust thing. Now, Cody McKenzie, who he was sure a flash in the pan, he's going on Twitter going off on Mac Danzig, because Mac Danzig was like, look, you didn't make money. If you weren't happy,
yeah, do something else.
Yeah. We all know the contracts we signed. Mac Danzig, so someone that has stated before that he wasn't happy with how things happened, and that is Mac Danzig.
Yeah.
He is supporting the UFC, saying, we know what we signed.
Yeah.
It's very clear. We know what we signed.
You know who else didn't get involved in the UFC antitrust lawsuit that really surprises me? Tito Ortiz.
Yeah, he's
been asked twice.
He passed
on it twice.
Yeah.
I mean, again, Tito Ortiz, who went out, middle fingers blazing, MFing everybody. Here's might have been his chance to try to hurt to a degree. I think he would have ended up looking foolish in his own right had he tried.
Maybe Tito doesn't have as much brain damage as I had initially thought. Because think about this for a second.
Well, you don't think the syphilis went to his brain after his marriage to Jameson?
Well, if you look at the rates of sexually transmitted diseases, it's unbelievable. And I would put money that he got something after he plugged into that. I'm just saying, and the poor guy. But he knew what he was doing. Maybe
he knew what he's getting involved in.
Maybe
just like the fighters in the UFC and
in the contracts.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the allure of it. Like, oh, I'm banging the porn star. I'm banging the stripper, or whatever. And then when you get something on you that Ajax can't take off, maybe, And now I do understand that there's kids involved in this, and I hope for the kids' sake that they take more after Tito. I can't believe I'm saying that, and less after the mom. And I'm sure that Tito's a good dude, a good dad and all that, because and why do you think he's still fighting and all that? Part of it's probably the fighter wants to stay relevant because he's a showman and he's a good showman. He saved the UFC early on for a while.
He was the first bad boy superstar of the UFC, especially when they're coming.
Heel.
He was coming. The UFC was coming out of their dark times where they couldn't get on pay-per-view.
Yeah.
No one would sanction their fights.
Yep.
And then Nevada and New Jersey stepped up and said we would. Tito Ortiz was the superstar that the UFC needed to bank on.
Yeah, and and I don't want to dish on the guy's family. I don't know what's going on there, but I think maybe Tito's a little bit smarter than people give him credit for. I know he says dumb things. You need to watch his his commentary with Affliction, I think it was, when he was doing the interviews. Oh, hell.
No, Rob, I don't believe that because I have heard locally here that anyone can do commentary and it must be really easy. So surely someone like Tito Ortiz is just a superstar at it, right?
Well, it depends on who you're talking to. Truthfully, a lot of people think they can do a lot of things until they have to do them. And then once they have to do them, they do realize the difficulty they got themselves into. Everyone wants to be an MMA fighter.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to be a photographer. Everyone wants to be in the radio. Everyone wants to do this. Everyone wants to do that.
Just because your iPhone does take pictures doesn't mean you should get paid for it. Just because you can talk does not mean you should get paid for it. Because
what if they're good pictures?
Okay, maybe your business model ought to change to taking selfies of tramp stamps. I mean, maybe that'll get you some more exposure than like the iPhone pictures.
It might do you pretty well, but back to what we were saying about the whole Twitter thing.
Yeah,
you have Mac Danzig and you have Cody McKenzie going back and forth, and to me, I liked Mac Danzig. I thought he was a great fighter, and it's a shame that he couldn't get further along.
Mac Danzig's in that stable of fighters like Joey Villasenor, Mac Danzig, Joe Stevenson, who were young guns way back in the day that I think their careers don't get enough credit.
Joe Stevenson. You know what my best memory of him is?
What's that?
When BJ Penn made him cry. No, in all seriousness, I like Joe Stevenson, and I really thought he could do more because he was a really good jiu-jitsu fighter, and he had really good hand speed.
Extremely good. Trained with Mark Lehman and Cobra Kai.
And here, this is a quote. This is from Matt Danzig MMA on Twitter. He said, "There's a lot of unfair shit in life, but we all know what we sign up for. We agree to the contracts. No need to complain now." Now here's Cody McKenzie. This is the mentality this individual has. Yeah, you blow Dana. Wow, okay.
That was mature.
Yeah, exactly. So, when you look at this, and this exchange goes on for a while, Matt Danzig, he tries to be intelligent. Hey, don't be silly. If you apply at McDonald's and you get hired, don't bitch about it after the fact. Why didn't you speak up before you quit? I'm broke too. I got used to it. And yes, we should have gotten taken care of. But whining about it after the fact is bitter and weak. And this is where Mackenzie just goes off about this on this little, like a rampage tangent, like a little bitch.
Yeah.
I don't want to read everything. If you want, go on Twitter and look at it. But it's I don't know. I almost feel embarrassed for Cody that he's that. There's some personalities that just should not be given internet access or a smartphone access. No, seriously, I think about it. Like tandem out MMA coverage that pops up. Much like ours. This microphone shouldn't be in my face. I have no qualifications to speak upon this.
I disagree, but I think there is a side of there is a little bit of a tragic lining there that, there are guys who are fighting that have fallen on really hard times, but the sport at the time was not designed to support a career like that and to plan for after careers are over.
Here's how things work, okay? Prize fighters fight for a prize.
Yeah. By definition, that's what they do.
Working to get there doesn't make you money.
No.
Getting the prize makes you the money. And if you look at how many divisions there are, there's only one champion in each division.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at how many people there are in the world, and considering maybe this is like horribly stereotypical here, but you look at every Brazilian fighter that comes out of Brazil, like it seems like everyone knows Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You have an entire culture that is ready to fight. But more seriously, look at all the people in the world that fight.
Yeah.
And that all want to get in the UFC. If you have 300 spots open for job applicants, and you have 50 billion people applying, there's not that many people in the earth. Sure. It's like 6.5 billion or something like that. But when you have this astronomical number of people applying to fill these vacancies, they have to realize that, hey, maybe I might get a shot. I might make some money. I might do well. Right. But the fact of the matter is, you might not do well.
Yeah.
Well,
it's all about planning for your future. I mean, you work for an employer, they're going to contribute to a 401k and they're going to match. Like, you should take advantage of that.
They do?
Mine
doesn't.
Some of them do. But I mean, it's planning for your future. There are fighters right now who had careers. They're doing well for themselves now because they thought, hey, I'm not going to be able to step in the octagon and fight forever.
Chael
Sonnen. Rich Franklin has launched a line of juices. Like, he's actually juicing. He's slinging orange juice now.
Yeah, good.
Randy Couture, did well by establishing his brand of gyms before he made the exit. Chuck Liddell, I think, is involved in UFC operations in some form or another.
He's punching wrecking balls on commercials for Duralast or something. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, there's good planning for a career and there's bad planning. Unfortunately, the UFC and combat sports as a whole, let's just put it, combat sports as a whole is not meant for hey, you got a big career here, kid. You're gonna go play. You're going right to the top. Yeah. It's not guaranteed.
Exactly.
And it's not guaranteed. And you're
look at how much money Mike Tyson made.
Yeah.
And the guy was goddamn broke.
Exactly. And what's Mike Tyson doing now? Mike Tyson's promoting boxing. It's what he knows. He doesn't have to fight, and it might make him a little bit of money he can live on.
Yeah, exactly. And you also have to think of the time period that a lot of these guys fought.
Yeah.
There wasn't as much money as there is now. The
not
Fox deal didn't exist. And I'm not saying that maybe it's a little bit embarrassing that people starting out were making like 3 and 3 or 5 and 5.
Yeah.
When I say this, I mean 1,000, like 3,000 or 5,000.
You mean like there's a show purse and the win purse?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And and I understand now that like the entry purses are a little bit higher. They're like 8 and 8.
Yeah.
And that's pretty good. But once you think about taking out taxes, manager tests, all that, it's a significant risk.
Yeah.
Okay. And I get that Dana White has more money than I'll ever know what to do with. I get that the Fertittas are ungodly wealthy. Mm-hmm. But you know what? They worked for the money. Yeah. They're allowed to have it. No one's saying, people are trying to say they can't, this antitrust lawsuit. But
how much money did the UFC lose in trying to get it to where it is today?
Oh my God.
I have to wonder if you look at the ledgers, and
there was one decision. They were one decision away from folding it up.
Yeah.
One.
But I mean, if you look at the ledgers nowadays, I'd guess that the UFC is maybe only 1 or 2 years out from breaking even from all the money they lost.
Yeah, I couldn't speculate on the numbers, but I can tell you they pay a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and look at the brand.
Oh, the branding's incredible.
What company right now is doing as well as the UFC is with branding? I can't think of any.
I mean, like companies in general or combat?
In general.
I think the UFC's right up there with the Ford, the GMs, the.
Well, I would say they're better than that. They didn't need to go to the government for a bailout. They were able to run. They're able to run their own business.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. But they're not preventing a Gladiators from the cage from doing anything. I mean, Gladiators in the Cage or Pinnacle FC could walk out and create their own walkout sweatshirts right now, and they're not stopping anyone from buying. The UFC is not stopping anyone from buying them, and that's the core of antitrust.
Yeah.
UFC is not preventing from anyone from doing that.
Exactly. I don't think this is something they even need to worry about. I think what they can do is they can just wipe their ass with this lawsuit. You know what? They might not even have to come up to the court date. You know.
Here's the scary thing, though, Rob. You know that. I know that. The Cage Nation listeners know that. But the scary thing is there are people in the world who actually believe that the UFC has done something wrong, and that's the alarming part. That the UFC might actually have legal trouble based on people not knowing what the true definition of a monopoly is. And, unfortunately, we elected those people, and they may be sitting in elected seats right now.
Well, you may have. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, we're not going to get into politics, but I mean, there's a reason why Pennsylvania is a blue state and shouldn't be. But just getting back to that. But I'm saying, sometimes, the people we elect, should there be a separate court for businesses? Certainly. A lot of our elected officials are business people, but do you understand the fight business?
No.
And that's the scary thing is whenever a fighter steps into the octagon, we say, never leave it to the judges. That's essentially what we're doing.
Yeah.
With this lawsuit, we're leaving it to judges who might not know better.
Now, think about this, though, okay? And I don't follow a lot of other sports aside from baseball.
Okay.
I like baseball. And, I'm not a huge football fan. I follow it enough to antagonize my friends, colloquially about it. But I don't really know. Are there other indications? Are there other circumstances that have happened where players have, and I understand there's a players union and people bitch about their contract all the time.
All the time.
I signed a contract, but I went out of it so I can make more money. No, serve your damn contract, then we'll talk about money. But
exactly.
The players union figures this out, and it must work for them because they renegotiate these contracts, and the money's there to do it. That's another important thing. But are there instances, does the NFL get sued for antitrust?
No.
But
see, I'm surprised the NFL hasn't.
Does NASCAR?
No. But I'm surprised they don't.
Why?
Well, there's the Canadian Football League. That
sucks.
There's the indoor football.
Sucks.
Well, touche. I mean, unfortunately, if the UFC's getting it now, I'm surprised the NFL hasn't. Is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that they should.
To me, I liken the UFC to those organizations, maybe without all the corruption.
Rob, you go out and buy a car, and you're going to go buy the best. You're going to go look at brands like BMW and Mercedes. You're not going to
No, I look at Honda, and then if I'm not buying a Honda or an Acura, I'm looking at a Porsche.
But we have an understanding of, we know what the ultimate is. We know what the best is.
Yeah.
It's the NFL, it's the MLB, it's the NHL, and it is the Ultimate Fighting Championship.
BMW and Mercedes, they don't stop people from putting leather interior in their cars. They don't stop other companies from selling.
They don't stop Ford from making vehicles.
Nope.
That would be the point of it is that would be antitrust. That's what antitrust is. Would be the UFC preventing CDMMA or Gladiators of the Cage from promoting, and they do not.
No. And do you know who often prevents people from promoting? Their own management.
Oh yeah.
And you know what? It might be hard now to catch up to a UFC. It would be hard. How would you do that? If you had Bellator in your hands, how do you make them the UFC? And in my mind, you're too far behind. You've lost.
Yeah.
The gun fired for the race. Bang. Start. Oh wait, guess what? UFC
stalled.
already beat you. You're done. You're sitting there with your thumb in your bum doing nothing.
I don't think Bellator is primed to beat the UFC in any stretch of the imagination. I think they can compete a lot better.
They can compete a lot better.
I think they can compete a lot better. But I mean, if Bellator is ever going to be better than the UFC, something catastrophic had better happen. I'm talking the UFC starts adding an alligator mode around the cage, electrifying the cage panels, and having a race to the handgun in the middle of the cage before Bellator beats the UFC.
If I had to pick events that I think would adversely affect the UFC and that would give other promotions really the push that they would need to rise up,
Yeah.
I would say that I'll use a sports reference. I forget the sports journalist that said this, but it might have just been an announcer, but he said a confluence of events. You would need a confluence of events to take place, and that would be Dana White needs to die and have no influence. And I'm not saying he needs to. I'm saying for this to happen, he would need to fall over dead and have nothing to do with the UFC anymore.
Right.
The Fertittas would need to sell it to maybe some prince from Mumbai or something. Sell the UFC. Then
sell it to Bernie Madoff.
Sell it to Bernie Madoff. Okay, so Bernie, this is what needs to happen.
And Bernie's going to run it from prison.
Tragically, Dana White passes away.
Right.
Bernie Madoff takes ownership of the UFC. And I like John Anik. I do. I think he's a good cat.
Yeah.
But to me, Joe Rogan and the UFC are almost synonymous.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Joe Rogan's the recognizable voice of the Ultimate Fighter Championship.
The whole Bruce Buffer thing, he doesn't do anything for me, And him or his brother Vince, none of them do. I'm sorry. They don't do anything for me. Nothing. I'm sorry.
Right,
the whole no, and then the snap of the card and all that. Just say who it is, say the record, and get the damn fight on. But you know what? Maybe that's what made UFC great made the UFC great is their showmanship to it. But
I think that's what made Pride great.
Oh,
that's what made Pride. Yeah, the whole show atmosphere. That's what made Pride great.
You tell me Pride's intro isn't great.
The crazy Pride lady, who I'm sure has a real name. I just don't know what it is.
No, the music.
Yeah, the music.
For
the entrances to the ring, the ring announcer. That's what made Pride great. And the UFC knew they couldn't compete with that, so they didn't even try.
Oh man, they should have though. But the Japanese are just a different people. The culture is very, very different.
Sakuraba had easily the greatest ring entrances of all time.
There's a reason that a lot of rock and metal and pop musicians go and retire to Japan.
Because Marty Friedman.
Oh my lord, I love Marty Friedman.
Marty Friedman. I mean, it's the same thing. It's that the Japan gravitates towards that show.
Paul Gilbert.
Yep.
He's another one that went over there. Yep. They do have some weird shit over there too, like baby metal. I don't get it. I can't fathom it. But what needs to happen for the UFC to really become a number two? The president, Dana White, needs to either pass away, go to Pluto. Pluto is a dwarf planet again, just so you know.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, they're bringing her back.
Nice.
Poor thing. She's probably all messed up in her head.
Daddy issues.
Oh my God, I have them. Then on top of that, the Fertittas would need to sell the business to someone else. Rogan and John Anik would need to step away. You would need to just clean house, and then all of the UFC stalwarts that retired fighters that Dana liked enough to say, hey, you know what, you should retire and not get any more brain damage, and I'll still take care of you. Every one of those needs to go away. And this is to not take anything away from the people behind the scenes that make things happen, because you know that they have a stellar legal team.
Oh yeah,
their personnel departments have to be great.
The UFC business offices have to be such a well-run machine for
clean house. This is what needs to happen.
Has to be perfection. Yeah. Has to be.
Every one of them would need to be fired and just change hands. Basically, it would just be like, hey, we have okay, I'll make it real quick. Everyone in the UFC vacates their spot. They just say, screw it, I'm leaving.
We're done.
I'm leaving. We're done. We're going to put out 300 or 500 or 1,000 or however many people job applications. These people are going to fill them. They'll still have the Fox deal. They'll still have all that. That's when you see the UFC become number two.
In a more extreme case, the UFC in a parallel universe, if something drastic were to happen to the rule change, like let's say like in the UFC you have to wear pillows on your knees instead of knee pads, and Bellator were to grab that rule change and run with it better, maybe then. But I'm talking like that's really, really extreme. That's really extreme. What I'm saying is the UFC is doing everything right now, and you're right. Everything about the UFC that is UFC right now would have to leave in its entirety.
And do you know what's great? When you are a brand that has done so well, you can make mistakes, and you still have enough of a lead on everyone else.
Still have enough market share.
Windows did it when they released that god-awful Windows ME.
Yeah.
Windows 8's an atrocity, but it's not the catastrophe that ME is.
Windows, was it Vista?
I had no problems with Vista. ME was the troublemaker.
Okay.
I'm telling you, ME had serious issues. Apple has had issues before.
Yeah.
But
With
these
Apple dropping the iPod Classic, which I'm still kind of bothered about. But I understand why they're doing it.
Did that make you sad?
It did.
Why?
Because I like being able to take my entire collection of music, my entire music catalog with me. The iPod Classic would hold like 80,000 songs that I'd never be able to fill in my lifetime. But I like knowing that I can take my entire music catalog with me. And the current iPod product line cannot do that.
Why?
Because it doesn't have the ability.
Exactly. But they make these mistakes.
Okay.
And they are still industry leaders.
Exactly.
UFC... the only way the UFC goes down is if they clean house, or if you find everyone in the UFC's upper echelon in a bedroom with a dead boy or a live girl. You know, I'm being serious. It's the same thing. It's like political incumbents. You know, they stay it.
Well, I think the one thing that does give this antitrust lawsuit teeth, as small as those teeth might be, and as dull as they may be, would be the Reebok deal.
Yeah,
I mean, because you're thinking like the UFC should really be thanking these sponsors. Because these sponsors are giving these athletes the chance to prepare themselves for great UFC product. UFC benefits from a sponsor sponsoring someone so they don't have to work a full-time job. They're able to train to get to world-class caliber. UFC benefits from that. And charging a sponsor a fee to even be on their TV, I think, is ludicrous. Because the sponsor is the one with all the risk.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee that having your patch on John Fitch's fight shorts are going to pay off and bring you business.
Well, I can tell you, I've never bought the official corn nut of the UFC. No, seriously, there's a sticker. What the hell is it even called? The official corn nut of the UFC. I've never drank a can of Zions.
Right.
Maybe I did. I don't know. I went through a rough patch there.
Well, I used to be in an industry where I had to inspect student housing. And honestly, like you walk into an apartment, you're checking the condition that's in. I can't tell you how many different bottles, like canisters of Muscle Farm that I saw.
Yeah,
you know,
like all the stuff that like it'll explode and stuff. Yeah.
I mean, like this, there's no guarantee that
that's gonna happen.
That Rob Lynn's barbecue shack being on someone's fight shorts are gonna pay off. You're providing
for the viewers out there. I do not have a barbecue shack.
Okay, but what I'm saying is like there's no guarantee. You're providing a resource for a fighter to train. That is guaranteed to them. There's no guarantee that your investment is coming back to you.
That's correct.
You're taking all the risk.
Yeah, exactly.
The sponsors are taking all the risk, and they're the ones getting hurt in the Reebok.
Well, the flip side of that, though, is I understand why people do have to pay to be there.
I would like if you explain that to me because I don't get it.
I think, and when I say this, I say it a little.
Okay.
I don't explicitly believe this to be the way that it should be.
Right.
What I mean is that if I call you up and you're fighting on UFC, I don't know what card they're up to now, 183. 83 is Silva Diaz, 82 is Jones Cormier.
Yep.
But you're on the UFC card. Oh yeah, if you wear my trunks and you're on the main card, I'll give you $1,000. If you're on the prelim card, I'll give you $700. Mm-hmm. And I don't follow through with that. Well, the UFC charging you, how you want to say it, like an entrance fee.
Yeah.
It's sort of like their screening process. It's keeping the Uncle Bobs out of it. If you're going to write a check to the UFC for the 10 or whatever grand, you're going to pay the fighter. But as that has been shown to be the case, there are fighters. What is his first name? Krasani is the last name. I know he's having trouble getting paid.
Roy Nelson's had a problem getting paid with sponsors too. I think it was I forget what the fight line was, but he's had trouble getting paid.
I know that, I don't want to say this, but when you got Roy Nelson, I know this is off topic, but he needs to get a manager that's not an idiot. He needs to get his head out of his ass because he could make a lot more money and do a lot better. But I don't know if it's his personality or his manager, but
when Roy Nelson
was fired.
When Roy Nelson was coaching the season of the Ultimate Fighter, the heavyweights, I mean, it's kind of easy to say that Roy Nelson was destined to be a prize fighter because, I mean, he surely wasn't going to cure cancer. It's not a knock against Roy Nelson. I mean, it's just the way the man, that's what his thought process is.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So, but yeah, I think the ones who get hurt here are the sponsors. I mean, these are the guys who are really supporting the sport. And the Reebok deal is, I don't agree with it. Like one of the things that really really make MMA presentable is that the Yeah,
I just wrote him a love note.
he did, and it kind of got me distracted. But the fighter uniforms, I mean, every body type has a different preference. Like,
well, I do want to say one thing on sponsorship deals.
yeah,
Before we get into the rest of the Reebok thing, I have always been against the UFC specifically sponsoring fighters.
oh, exactly.
That just it to me, it is a smack in the other opponent's face.
Well, it's like the UFC saying, "I'm picking this guy."
Yeah, and that shit bothers me
Yeah.
because as a promoter, you need to be fair,
You do.
unbiased, balanced.
You
know?
don't go to Pinnacle and see Mark Jericho with Pinnacle FC fight gear on.
Let's go back to that article I mentioned that was in this month's Playboy with Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
Where they referenced Don King was protesting the results of the fight where Buster Douglas beat him. Don King's the promoter.
Yeah. Why? Yeah, exactly.
Why is the promoter doing that? And
Promoter shouldn't.
that's how I feel about the UFC sponsoring its own fighters.
David
Unless it sponsored all of them.
David Shim and Jeremy Sakuda. I leaned over to Jim Ajay and I said, if I were Jeremy Sakuda, I'd be filing a protest with the Pennsylvania State Athletic Commission on that decision.
I would agree with you.
Okay? That's not saying Robert Joseph's going to go file the petition.
No,
because
he's
it's
a
not his
promoter.
place.
It's not his place to do
Right.
that.
The same thing with Don King. So the UFC sponsoring fight gears, it's like saying, hey, I'm picking this guy. The Reebok deal doesn't make sense to me either because they're saying we're going to have fighter uniforms. Okay. Well, different body types. Cody Garbrandt wears the biker shorts. Chris Dempsey wears the board shorts. Like the presentation. Daryl Madison wore the like the boxing trunks that were kind of flowy underneath.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's a style. It's the different styles. I mean, those kind of shorts that kind of lend to those styles. For the UFC creating uniforms, well, what does that say?
Are they going to allow? Are they going to make different styles?
I think they're making the bike shorts and the board shorts, but like
So if you were like a Thai boxer,
like Dan Kakuda,
Yeah.
like the Thai shorts,
yeah,
those are out.
wow,
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think I like that.
I don't
too
like
much
it
at
either.
all.
And I think the money and the politics behind it is really kind of limiting things.
And Reebok has some money, that's for damn sure.
Yeah, I bet Nike's kicking themselves for not trying to get in there first.
You know what? Nike could still make it happen.
Well, okay, let's
They backed me pretty good for my shoes.
we're gonna bring this around real quick though. One of the things that Rampage was MFing the UFC on right before he left for Bellator was his deal with Reebok.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the UFC didn't support it or facilitate it the way Rampage thought they should have. And now look how those tables have turned.
Yeah. Well, and look, they're going to get Rampage
They're
back. Oh, Christ. UFC.com /
fighters / weight class /
light heavyweight, and you got 47 people. And that's even including the people that they haven't removed from the site.
Those are including retired fighters.
Oh God! But who does he beat in the top 10? I know I digress, but who can he beat in the top 10?
I have no clue. One of the things that had me concerned for a moment about the UFC antitrust was the fact that there was Pride Fighting Championships went out on top, and I know that you and I discussed that before the mics went on. That there was a lot more reasons why Pride Fighting Championships went out.
Yakuza.
Might have to edit that one out. But Pride FC went out on top.
Fight Works.
Pride FC went out on top, and I mean I never saw it coming when it was announced that the Fertitta brothers bought the Pride Fighting Championships. I'm like, wow. But they had legal troubles. Their TV deals were in danger. And the UFC being sued for antitrust and potentially getting into it with Bellator, I mean that kind of does look like an indicator that trouble's on the way.
Yeah, and business is done differently in Japan though. That's another thing to consider. And okay, we'll go back to this business school that we've went to. I understand that there's like the culture of do you do business in the parent country or do you do it in the host country, like the way that do we do business in Japan the way Americans do business, or do we do business in Japan the way the Japanese do business?
It's like the book Kiss, Bow, or Shake Hands. Like, what customs are you obligated to?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. I just don't see this being a problem for the UFC. I don't.
I hope it's not.
It's a headache. It's a couple phone calls where they're on the phone with their really good lawyers that are wearing their Armani suits, Rolex watches, and
I think the antitrust lawsuit would be a bigger deal if it were Anderson Silva, if it were John Bones Jones, and Cain Velasquez.
Oh, don't say that, because I could see John Bones being dumb enough to say something. Oh shit! Have you followed this guy's tweets before he deletes them?
No.
Oh, I know Twitter's not news, but this guy's like a Kardashian almost.
Wow.
Oh, and he's super talented fighter. Super talented.
He was actually mentioned on Jeopardy the other night.
Oh.
You know that MMA is legit and that John Bones is legit whenever it's mentioned on Jeopardy. That's how you know things have gotten real.
You know, he's been legit in my mind, you know, the whole time. And okay, you know how we were talking about on paper it says that Rampage beat Lyoto Machida.
Yeah.
It
we know
also says on paper that Matt Hamill beat John Jones.
Really?
The elbows.
That's right.
Yeah, Jones got DQ'd.
That's right.
Yeah, and here's what's interesting though, and you know I know we're a couple years behind talking about this, and you know if any one picking their nose has a problem with it, oh well. Matt Hamill was going to tap to that fight because he dislocated his shoulder.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was on one of the takedowns or when he was on the ground.
It was something pretty abrupt.
Yeah, exactly. So it wasn't even the elbows that did it, but John Jones has always been legit. I just think he has a brain full of rocks, and he says like really dumb shit. I really think that Alexander Gustafsson should be wearing the title.
Oh, agreed. I think that was one of the worst robberies we've seen.
Oh, you see, I thought that you disagreed with me on that at one
No,
point.
I thought Gustafsson beat him.
Okay, so did I. And you know what? I'd like to see the rematch, even if it happens as a title fight or if it happens.
I think it needs to happen as a title fight.
Well, and think about this ridiculousness, right? So Gustafsson set up for the title.
Yeah.
Who gets hurt? Jones gets a new opponent. Who gets hurt? But that fight still gets to happen.
Yeah.
Even though Gustafsson could be like, well, hey, you know. But yeah, that's another digression. We're pretty good at that here at Cage Nation.
We are.
When I'm involved.
No, it's good. It's good. I mean, we're throwing back. But if Gustafsson had been awarded the title like he should have been, it would have completely changed the light heavyweight picture.
Oh.
Rampage Jackson still not beating anyone who's top 10. But
Yeah.
it would have changed. It would have completely changed the
Yeah,
picture.
let's put it this way: if John Jones is the 20th ranked heavy or light heavyweight, or the first ranked light heavyweight, I think that Rampage doesn't win that fight. You know, I don't think he stands with any of the top 10.
No,
I don't. And that's a shame because
being
I'd like
top,
to see it.
Being top 10 in Bellator is like having the shiniest helmet in the boxcar race with the slowest car. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, it really doesn't.
Yeah.
Being top 10 in Bellator is like being really good at something. It's like being number one at curling. Who cares? You know, like.
You ever watched Olympic curling?
Yes.
It's awesome.
I would agree the sport's awesome, but can you tell me?
I'm messing with you.
No, but I mean, can you tell me who the number one curling team in the world is?
USA.
Are they?
I don't
know. I don't know. Maybe Rampage
know.
will go play curling for the USA team, and maybe we'll bring home that gold medal. I don't know.
I don't think I would be able to. I'm just guessing because, like, you know, blood sport. Okay, USA. You know what scene I'm talking about, right?
When they're about to go into the shady halls of Hong Kong.
Oh God, or is it? It's either OK USA or
No,
OK
it's
USA.
It's OK USA, and
That's
then
it.
and they the part at the beginning of the movie, like, they're in the tournament, and they're like, they say, oh, Shenzo Tanaka is his Shidoshi. Like, who cares if Bruce Springsteen is his effing Shidoshi? You know, that movie's just great, and I'm gonna watch it when I go home actually, because I love that movie that much. It's actually on Netflix now. If you guys are at home listening and you're like, oh man, Bloodsport, it's on Netflix. It's certainly worth the watch. But I agree. I don't think the UFC has any worries. I think what might end up happening is someone will try to pull something funny like injunctions getting filed that might delay cards.
No,
You don't think?
it ain't gonna happen.
I can see them trying to pull it.
They can try it, but it ain't gonna happen.
I think the injunction getting filed would be more against Rampage and with Scott Coker behind it than it would be with the
Good.
Yeah.
Good. They need to delay that. They need to delay that until someone opens up their damn head and has it examined. Dana White, what are you thinking? You're the best in the business, and you brought Rampage back.
When I've heard
you know what it might be? I think I figured it out.
What?
Maybe he is smarter than I thought. Here's what's going to happen. He's bringing Rampage back.
Okay.
He's going to let him lose more than 2 or 3 fights.
Yeah.
But he's doing it just to get his ass kicked for all the things he said about the UFC.
Ah.
When you're in the position that you can pay the money.
It's like James Toney fighting Randy Couture. There was no hope that he was ever going to beat.
Oh my God. You know what he made?
What?
I heard the fight card, the purse was $500,000.
James Toney made $500,000 on that fight?
The purse! Not including if he got points, and you know he did.
James Toney's show purse was $500,000.
I read that the other day that he got like $500,000 to get there. And he lost to an ankle
Wow.
pick. He got ankle picked.
He got ankle picked like his life depended on it. That
Yeah.
just completely blew my mind.
Yeah, I'm going to, before we wrap up, I'll look on my phone here and
Yeah,
see if I
yeah.
can figure that out.
But, the UFC, I think the legal problems is someone could end up trying to file a illegal injunction. I don't think it would work. I think there would try to be some like legal agita.
Here you go. UFC 118 fighter salaries. James Toney tops the list with $500,000, and that's on MMAmania.com, September 2nd, 2010. And that's also on multiple other fights, too.
Jeez.
Mm-hmm.
If he would have won that fight, he would have walked away with a win over a UFC champion and $1 million.
MMA Frenzy says, oh, no, okay, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that it says that he got $1.428 million, but he did not. He got $500,000 of the $1.428 million.
Okay.
Okay. So
If he got paid $500,000, I gotta wonder how much Couture got paid.
$250,000.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous.
On the same fight card, BJ Penn got $150,000 and Damian Maia got $68,000. So that's just to put things into perspective for you.
All right, folks, we're going to come back. We're going to take a look at the Cameron Underground right here on Cage Nation TV. We got a fight coming up, and we'll talk to you guys again. Okay, Peter Ayer's getting the TKO victory over Waukesha. Again, the fight doesn't matter, but that's half the fun of it being the Cage Nation TV Underground. It doesn't matter. The fights just don't matter.
Well, no, I'm sorry. We shouldn't say they don't matter. They probably do. It might matter when they go to Bellator. then go to the UFC because of the antitrust. I don't know. This whole flipping thing has my head confused.
Absolutely. Rob, I want to thank you very much for coming down and doing Cage Nation TV with us today. Hopefully we get you on more episodes. Make sure you like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and all the late-breaking local news, of course, we have on CageNationTV.com. I'm your elected official, Albert Cameron. With me is the best photographer in combat sports in the Center Region, Mr. Rob Lynn. Rob, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you guys next week.
All right, take care.